Welcome all to a very special 30th episode of Dark Aspects, which also happens to be the 8th and final chapter to one of my favorite, if not my most favorite, game of all time, Mother 3. After 12 parts with nearly 3 hours worth of content total, we are finally at the conclusion for the Mother series. I have easily spent hundreds of hours researching and writing the 50 plus pages of scripts, recording them and editing everything together. It has been a labor of love, so I am both relieved and sad that it's all over after this. But don't worry, I will still make videos about the Mother series alongside Dark Aspects, of course. So far for Mother 3 alone, a game that looks as cute as this, you should keep in mind. We have talked about the following topics in depth. I'm not going to read them all out loud, but here they are. Today, we are going to talk about a great many more, including totalitarianism, parental abandonment, existential horror, sacrifice, child suicide, the annihilation of mankind and the world at large, and more. Chapter 7 last left off with Lucas pulling his third needle. The masked man has also pulled 3, so there's just one keeping the Dark Dragon and all of its divine power restrained. It is at this point, with nearly everyone having moved on from Tazmily over to his city, that the King P moniker is dropped, and now most refer to him by his actual name, Porky. He graciously invites Lucas and the rest of his friends to join everyone for what is, as best described by the DCMC's keyboardist, a festival for the end of all life. Porky has gathered all of the Nowhere Island's inhabitants and beyond, as he's been kidnapping people from different eras and forcing them to join his army for one twisted, apocalyptic celebration of the Dark Dragon's predestined awakening. Everyone has been envious of the supposedly superior New Pork City, but now that they're actually here, now that everyone is here, it's become obvious that this is a dystopia. The big city is an unclean, creepy, and crowded place that fills up with even more people as we progress the plot. Nothing here has substance. If the unusable and or fake goods in the flying limousine ride didn't tip you off, all the extravagance is for show. And there's this evil yet childlike innocence that permeates throughout, as foreshadowed by Porky's playroom back in Thunder Tower. He's created a warped kiddie wonderland, where he and everyone else can revel in his unhealthy past. Multiple robots, modeled after Porky's negligent mother, run a fast food shop, likely as a way to provide him with some sort of uncanny comfort. To everyone else, it's just unsettling, but also sad, as his real mother didn't love him, so he replaced her with something that will. It seems that nobody ever really liked Porky, save for maybe Electra, his maid in Mother 2 he replaced in this game with a look-alike. So he's forced everyone to surrender to him via reconstruction and brainwashing. This doesn't truly satisfy him though, because I think he knows deep down that nobody would legitimately love him without these means. So after making all of humankind submit, he plans to eliminate the species that betrayed him once and for all. He wishes for anyone who doesn't like him to be gone. And when you take away his tools for suppression, that extends to every single person and creature here. Everything terrible that's happened in this game is because Porky wants revenge on humanity. Likely through the combination of a carking childhood and Gigas' evil influence, he indulges in cruelty. Porky is a sadist, who disturbingly singles out Lucas as the one he wants to suffer most. I don't think he deliberately sought out Lucas at first or anything, as Hanawa's death seems to have just been an inadvertent result of his careless actions. Lucas probably became his primary target for 2 reasons. The first is obvious. Lucas is the only other chosen boy capable of awakening the wish-granting dragon, which can directly affect Porky's plans. The fact that his enslaved needle puller and Lucas are twins just adds that much more to his depraved sense of fun. The second reason though is more speculation on my end, but I think that whether it be from his appearance or status as a hero tasked with taking him down, Lucas probably reminds Porky of Ness, the arch-nemesis he clearly has unresolved feelings about. To focus more on this point, Porky wanted nothing more than to dominate his ultimate rival in the previous game, so when that plan failed, he resorted to a replacement. Porky's been spiraling down a progressively worsening moral path since the first time we met him. Shigesato Itoi describes both Porky and Facade's criminal descent as first being influenced by someone really terrible, like Gigas. Then what started off as playing around soon turned into dirty tricks. Dirty tricks evolved into unforgivable deeds, and not before long, evil sin. For more about this topic and Mother 3's own approach to evil, Itoi points us to a Shin Buddhism book called the Tanisho, which yes, I have read in preparation for this video. Nevertheless, Porky began his journey as a foil to Ness on the lesser but still extreme side of the spectrum, until his mean pranks and crimes became the evil sin Lucas has had to take the brunt of. That's really all it is. Lucas will continue to be Porky's punching bag until the Pig King falls. But before we confront him by climbing his Tower of Torment, we have to navigate this freak show and slump through the sewers to speak with an old friend. Leader, the too-tall bell ringer who's been imprisoned here by Porky, shocking I know, because of the secrets he keeps. In the biggest lore dump this series has ever seen, Leader reiterates that Tazmily was absolutely a painless paradise before the Pigmask army muddied it. But besides the newest generation of Tazmily, those who were born here like Lucas and Klaus, all of the islanders were immigrants that escaped to nowhere from a ruined world. Due to some unspecified apocalyptic event that humans were directly responsible for, their old world was completely destroyed, and these islands, specially protected by the Dark Dragon, remained as the sole safe haven for the few who survived. Right before the end of their previous world, what Leader calls a white ship provided passage for those spared. The people who arrived aboard the white ship feared a second Judgment Day more than anything, so, as to not repeat the same mistakes that caused the old world's annihilation, they all agreed to surrender their memories and store them inside of the mystical hummingbird egg we've been tasked with protecting, so that they could all start over by living life unsullied in pure innocence with newly imagined identities and roles. However, it was necessary for one individual to retain the truth, and naturally, because of Leader's distinguishing trait as a giant, he was selected to keep watch over them all and ensure that their real memories remained repressed indefinitely, revealing them only if they were ever needed again. And they were. Unfortunately though, Porky was likely given intel about Leader, so before he could warn anyone, he was discreetly locked away and isolated here, without much suspicion aroused. People were aware that Leader was gone, how could you not be? But they no longer knew his true purpose and didn't think much of his disappearance. Everyone has been happy, living their new lives in ignorant bliss. But then Porky stumbled upon this place in this era, using the phase distorter, called a time distorter in Leader's speech, which is probably the one he stole from the previous game. It allowed him to travel through the space-time continuum at will, a power he abused and now faces the consequences of. He's messed with the fabric of the universe so much that he's been granted immortality, but cursed in that he must live forever in a frail, withered body that houses his adolescent mind. This fact is made much more disturbing when considering Porky's fate, which we'll get to soon. Porky was apparently, and interestingly, shut out from all other times and spaces before landing on these islands, which would be an amazing side story in and of itself. I really like that while the way he and everyone else got here is explained well enough, it's all left purposely vague as to encourage theories and generate discussion. For example, we know that humans caused the end of the world, but we don't know exactly how. Was it a fallout from global nuclear warfare? Did some other man abandon their alien child who grew up to be a world eater worse than Gigas? While it's said that the Nowhere Islands are an impervious part of the previous world, world itself is an indistinct word that can be defined in a way that encompasses life beyond Earth. White ship, then, might be referring to a boat, but it could very well be a spaceship instead. Personally, I do think that all of Tazmily's residents evacuated from the world established in Mother 2. Back when the Nintendo 64 version of Mother 3 was cancelled, Itoi posted several screenshots of what could have been, with two pictures in particular displaying what looks like Fourside and Onett, Ness and Porky's hometown, in rubble. Much of what this game was supposed to be has been faithfully revived for the Game Boy Advance release, but perhaps Leader's explanation was initially a bit more show instead of all tell. That being said, As a result of how the story we got was presented, many types of conclusions can be drawn, as we'll see with the ending. This was by design, as Itoi believes that players add more than half of the meaning and value to video games, so that part they've contributed is entirely their own. He goes on to state that his personal feelings steer him to want to affirm everything the player thinks about the game. He wanted to make Mother 3 like a mirror, one that reflects the heart of the player off of the screen. I'm rambling on like an evil mushroom though, and this sewer is starting to stink more than Earthbound's advertising. So let's leave behind a broken facade to forever fester in filth and push past the ever-growing, mindless mob to make a break for the empire Porky building. Porky himself waits at the very top of this impractically cool and intimidating tower, using the opportunity to bully Lucas and stall time by controlling the elevator. It forces the party to stop and take detours through ridiculous floors, like this hall of toilets and the fan room I mentioned in the last video, which is its own secluded harem for half-dressed, most likely brainwashed girls to dote over him, by the way. Plus a lip-locking centaur, don't forget about that little detail. The next floor following all that absurdity is Facade's home. This is where a couple of major revelations are made. First of all, he's Locria, the Final Needle's guardian. I haven't brought this up yet, but the Magypsies were all interestingly named after musical modes by the game's composer, Shoko Sakai. Locria being the traitor of their group is genius, because the Locrian mode is infamously the most unstable and dissonant. The other shocking discovery here is that the fallen Magypsy actually kept a pet that he cared for and didn't abuse. This mouse was loved by the most abominable of villains, showing that even evil can have a soft side. Now that we're questioning everything we thought we knew, one of the last distractions is the nice person hot spring, which rivals only the Chimera Lab in how unsettling it is. These rows of capsules reveal that Porky took another page out of Gigas' book by entrapping people inside these green liquid tubes. Porky uses them more explicitly than Happy Boxes for indoctrinating the masses to become his loyal followers. This even extends to livestock, as soaking in the liquid makes them want to become a delicious meal for Porky. At this time, Lucas and company must be at the end of their rope, having to jump through the Pig King's hoops. The fun isn't over yet though, as they'll have to prove themselves to be suitable playmates by letting a mecha version of him win, but only by a razor-thin margin, as his ego must be properly stroked. Oh, and he tries to eliminate them all after with this natural killer cyborg abomination too. But behind that door lies a boat ride, showcasing a certain someone's memories, which finally takes us to his elusive throne room. Facade/Locria's needle is discovered towards the end of Porky's monologue, deep underground below where Lucas and his friends are standing. He abruptly activates a separate elevator in the middle of the room that sends them plummeting down 100 stories until they crash into the needle excavation site with no way of going back. As a quick note, the English fan translation team found lots of unused text linked to the elevator shaft, perhaps suggesting it was initially going to be a leisurely ride down, where everyone reflects back on Leader's speech. What is presumably Duster asserts that even though Wes might not be his biological father, the old man's definitely his real dad. Duster, Kumatora, and Lucas were also supposed to have come to the realization that all three of them are without mothers, giving this game's name an entirely new meaning. Moving along, the twins' father Flint was taken with them for the freefall, and now insists on running off ahead of the pack to confirm a suspicion that's been eating away at him. He's ultimately realized and come to terms with the fact that the masked man is the son he's been looking for since Chapter 1. Flint is the best of the bad fathers that plague the Mother series. These past few years, he's largely been absent from Lucas's life because he's been spending that time endlessly scouring the mountains on the notion that Klaus might still be out there, alive. We all know that his pursuit was in vain, as the pig masks found him first, probably already dead, but Flint is now relieved to have some sort of answer to his anguish. He's the one to tell Lucas for certain that Klaus has been found living, in some capacity, as Porky's robot. Both Lucas and Flint see the family member that was taken from them in the Masked Man. But Porky couldn't care any less. He has zero compassion for Klaus, scoffing at the fact that the monster he's created used to have a person's name. To Porky, Klaus is nothing but a means to an end. If that, and every other soulless deed this child dictator's carried out, doesn't make you want to end his reign, then you've been soaking in a certain hot spring for a little too long. So shake it off, as it's time to engage Porky in battle. As a nod to Gigas' fight, you'll have to fend off his inexplicable attacks until the spider mech carrying him powers down. This is the only way to actually defeat Porky, because as stated before, he can't die. Without a machine to fight for him, Porky cowardly ducks inside another. But this thing isn't built for fighting. It's called an absolutely safe capsule, and all it does is provide absolute safety from receiving or inflicting damage. Porky mentions that he's simply taking cover inside of it for the time being. What he doesn't realize, however, is that while he supposedly tricked Dr. Andonutz and the Mr. Saturns into making it for him, Dr. Andonutz thought ahead and designed it so that once a person seals themselves inside, it's impossible to exit. Worst of all is the fact that Porky is immortal, so he's trapped in here for all of eternity. He is now absolutely safe from the world, and the world is now absolutely safe from him. You can theorize all you want about Dr. Andonutz, or some other scientist in the far future, inventing a device that allows him to escape this eternal prison, but Itoy has confirmed that in 5.5 billion years from now, Porky will still be alive. So when the sun inevitably dies and Earth as we know it ceases to be, the absolutely safe capsule will still be keeping him safe. Which by extension has to mean that in hundreds of billions of years from now, when the universe itself may perish through heat death and decay, ripping apart, collapsing, or whatever fated cosmic horror awaits, the absolutely safe capsule will keep Porky alive. The existential dread of this is so significant and so interesting that I can't help but think about it from time to time. To put the weight of Porky's fate into perspective, try and picture yourself actually being trapped inside of this thing. It helps that there's a real-life product similar to it for natural disaster emergencies called a survival capsule. So look at this footage and imagine yourself isolated inside of there for one whole year, with nothing to do but gaze out of a tiny window, left alone with your own thoughts. You'd go mad. 1 year is an unfathomably long time to exist in this thing, right? Now, think about the prison sentence Porky's guaranteed to live out. We know for certain he'll at least be in there for 5.5 billion of those long years. So what's just 1% of that? 55 million years. The United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners defines prolonged solitary confinement as a time period in excess of 15 consecutive days. Just 15 days, or a little over 2 weeks, in total isolation falls under their restriction as a cruel, inhumane, and/or degrading punishment. So what about all of Porky's time spent with zero human contact? I know there's a lot of fans out there that say, good, this is what Porky deserves. But truly sparing a moment to think about the horror that this entails is what Andonutz was talking about when he spoke with remorse. I don't think that any living thing, yes, even Porky, deserves this. I'm going to leave that conversation there though. If you're interested in hearing more on my thoughts about the matter and the changes Porky might go through inside of the capsule, I may just make it into a separate video later on. For now though, it's time to end our Dark Aspects of Mother 3 journey with what I think is the most somber moment to exist in a Nintendo game. A one-on-one fight to the death between brothers. When he is reached, the masked man tries to overpower everyone immediately with a mortal blast of lightning. Lucas's lightning deflective Franklin badge redirects it, but unlike last time, it only offers protection for himself. Your 3 other party members are knocked unconscious, and if any one of them is revived during the fight, the masked man will put them back down without hesitation. It's made obvious that this has to be an exclusive battle between brothers. Going in though, Lucas can't bring himself to attack, knowing that it's family standing in front of him. The conditioned Klaus's memories are deeply repressed though. According to Porky, he doesn't know anything about who Lucas is anymore, so this soon becomes a one-sided clash, with the older twin mercilessly beating down his forgotten brother. This encounter is a fight to keep Lucas alive. Heal, defend, just when it seems that Klaus won't ever let up. The voice of Hinawa, the twins' mother, calls out to the both of them to stop fighting. It fails to reach the masked man at first, but it eventually starts affecting him as his relentless attacks become weaker and weaker. Before his ruthlessness is assuaged though, he attempts to strike Lucas down with powerful Sai. But Flint jumps in front of the son he's neglected and takes the psychokinetic bullets for him. Thankfully, while they deal major damage, what level was he at when we last played as him again? 16? The damage doesn't kill him. It's effective in showing just how far gone Klaus is, and Flint's willingness to sacrifice himself makes it clear he does care about both of his sons equally, even though this is one of the only times in the game that he's shown it. Lucas, likely feeling an intense mix of devastation and rage, is only now confidently able to hit back. What's notable too is that the waving battle background made up of prominent angular shapes and bold colors changes the more the masked man begins to realize who he is. At first, it begins fizzling out like static on a television. Then, what was once rigid, focused intensity slows and loosens, while the stark palette softens to pastels, paired with the music that starts off erratic, with a distorted, distant version of the love theme that eventually becomes more heartfelt and pronounced. These cues are a solid indicator of his mental state throughout. If you haven't yet, I highly recommend listening to Battle Against the Masked Man outside of the game, with headphones on. Shogo Sakai expressed Klaus's internal struggle perfectly with this song. There are so many details, like one out-of-place note that trails off, and a piano riff that circles around and around as if to emulate the feeling of going insane. The sad echoes of the mother Lucas and Klaus prematurely lost is gradually getting through to him, made especially clear after a flashback plays out of the two boys as infants in their cribs. This wrecks Lucas too. Neither of them know what to do anymore, and now, trying to throw punches results in Lucas shutting his eyes and missing. Fighting to stay alive is no longer the main concern. It's evolved into a fight to hold back tears all around. The remaining lines of text that conclude this sequence hit harder than PK Love Omega, but the way that I, or anyone else describes them can never accurately put into words how impactful they are to experience in the moment. Hanawa saying, "Come to your mother. You must be so exhausted. Come here, Klaus." This line finally breaks him, and me too, as he removes his helmet to reveal a face that looks just like Lucas's. Klaus has finally regained control of his mind, but what if it's only temporary? In a prompt, decisive maneuver, Klaus fires an intense bolt of lightning at his twin, knowing very well that the Franklin badge would keep Lucas safe, but send the blast right back his way, killing him. Klaus is fatally wounded and staggers towards his brother, nostalgically embracing him for the last time as he dies in Lucas's arms. Many fans question why Klaus had to commit suicide, but I think there are several factors to consider here. First of all, Klaus's awakening could very well have been fleeting, so perhaps he used the opportunity to do what Lucas couldn't. He ended his own life to protect his family in case he reverted back. I think that's a likely possibility, but there are more. What if Klaus wasn't able to forgive himself for all that he's been made to do as the Masked Man? What if he was already dead when discovered and forcibly revived, so his soul was simply pining for a reunion with his mother? Whatever combination of the above is true, there is now nothing stopping Lucas from pulling that final needle and passing his heart onto the dragon. Lucas's life and the lives of all who believe in him are put on the line as the sacred seal is released skyward and the sleeping deity rises. In what is perhaps the most cinematic sequence the series has ever seen, the Nowhere Islands in its entirety is overcome by falling meteors, waterspouts, earthquakes, and eruptions enclosed by an inferno. No one is free from the unrestrained, unbiased destruction, as Asohe Castle is consumed by the earth, and a fleeing Pigmask airship is swiftly shot down. We catch just a glimpse of the cause for all of this, the Dark Dragon, as the screen violently shakes and fades out. Then, just 3 letters appear, END, followed by a question mark, suggesting there's more to see here. From this point, you can actually walk around as the end text and talk to others. It doesn't always reveal whom exactly you're talking to, but it's easy enough to guess based on their manner of speaking. We of course bump into Kumatora and Duster, but also familiar friends like Rope Snake and a Save Frog. You eventually touch something rolling around too, which is probably Porky inside of his capsule. Everybody from throughout the adventure greets you, the player, as yourself, to give their thanks and let you know that everything turned out okay. Everybody is apparently alive and well. What specifically happened is never elaborated on. We can only read about and piece together the fate of these characters as we navigate this void. But, after an emotional credits crawl, the game leaves us with one final image, one last message, while a touching track plays in the background. In the first episode I mentioned the meaning of the starting logo's uncomfortable blend of wood and metal, but here, a fully wooden logo with a healthy earth in place of the metallic sphere prominently displays itself. So what does this all mean? Well, when I first played the game, I actually envisioned this screen as some kind of afterlife. However, over time I've changed my view, and I now think that the Nowhere Islands were reset, cleansed of the Pigmask army and everything they've tainted. All of their technology, their chimeras, the brainwashed people and soldiers that fill out their ranks, purified. Porky himself may still be unaffected, of course, but everyone on the outside gets another go at a peaceful life on the islands before his meddling. I think this is implied by the true end screen, the befouled, manufactured logo restored to a natural state. I don't think that Hinawa and Klaus were revived, but as stated before, if that's how you want the game to end, then you can interpret it that way, because Itoi deliberately left these plot threads just loose enough for that purpose. The ending of the N64 version was reportedly even darker, possibly absent of any indication that anyone's alright. But I think Itoi's vision of an ending that's as pure white as the morning after a long, dark night is entirely intact here. Quite literally too, as the backdrop against the newly revitalized logo is white, following our stumbling around in the pitch dark. To quickly touch upon how the final battle could have been darker, Itoi was, for Mother 64, thinking about alternatively just not having any dialogue whatsoever, kind of like in Chapter 6. There are a lot of unused backgrounds featuring disturbing imagery of Klaus within the final game's files. So are they a remnant of that idea, to tell Klaus's story through visuals alone? If that's the case, perhaps these striking drawings were later replaced with the minimalist designs, because Itoi realized that they could get the point across, and ultimately, he's able to convey more with the right words. This is all speculation, of course, but it's tough to imagine these being planned for anything but the Masked Man fight, much like these unused cutscenes. I could go on about the ending we could have received, but I think that overall, what we got here is such an effectively satisfying, heartbreaking, and exhilarating conclusion to my favorite game series. It's an ending you'll contemplate long after the credits roll, and I hope you'll continue to think about this series of videos long after I say goodbye. This has been the largest, most time-consuming project I've ever completed for the channel, and I'm happy that it's now out there in the world for all of you to interpret. If you join me for each and every episode, or just jumped headfirst into the finale here, you have my deepest thanks. I will be compiling all of these videos into one mega upload soon, so please look out for that. I hope we'll meet again for future videos covering both the Mother series and the dark aspects of Nintendo. Thanks.
One.